R&D, but we just don't seem to want to scale it up to produce our own equipment. And I think that's on the turn. I just hope that we can educate, realise that return on investment in automation is quite viable these days.
Welcome to the MTD Podcast. I'm Giovanni Albanese, hosting today's show, a passionate engineer and a very proud member of the MTD team. I'm really excited to be back at the UK headquarters of Fanuc in Coventry, a £1 billion global organisation. And in this week, we've been here for their open house. We've been talking to lots of industry leaders, and today we're joined by Mark Harries, account manager for Rockwell Automation, another $1 billion organisation globally. Welcome to the MTD Podcast, Mark.
Welcome, thanks for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Also joined in this podcast is the founder of MTD, Paul Jones.
Good afternoon, Gio.
Been a good week, Paul?
Yeah, good. It has been a good week, isn't it?
It's been
really good.
Very
been a busy week. There's about 700 people registered for the event, of which 600 have already turned up. So, with over a day and a half to go, I'm sure they'll exceed their numbers and expectations. So no, it's been thoroughly enjoyable. Yeah,
very educational. And last but not least, Mark Deadman.
Well, Paul, I wouldn't say it's about the numbers; it's about the quality. And if the quality is anything to go by the catering, I would say it's a great success.
And actually, it was mentioned by Tom Boucher, the managing director, yesterday, that the quality, and I'm sure Mark, you'll be able to concur with this, the quality of attendee has been right up there. So that is
really high quality. Some key decision makers and big blue chip companies visiting all the stands. So yeah, been very good.
Good.
And it's the first time I've met you this week, Mark, and I've got to say I've learned so much from you over the last few days, looking at your products, solutions, and I'd like to start the podcast with this, really. I mean, the podcast, really, we're going to be looking at integration and partnerships with Fanuc and why automation is so important and why we need it to be competitive globally in the UK. But let's start with the Magnum Motion. I've never seen this product before, and we couldn't figure it out to start off with, how it would lend itself to the CNC industry. Can you tell our listeners about this particular
probably need
product?
Because obviously no one's going to, we can't visualise
it's a difficult one.
Difficult one to describe,
explain as
isn't
it
it?
looks and what it does, yeah.
Absolutely. So the Magnum Motion system is an intelligent conveyor system. So if you can picture, if of a certain vintage like me, a Scalextric track that kind of clicks together, it's a really flexible manufacturing solution to transport goods from machines and processes and divert them where they're needed. So rather than a linear process where you can waste a lot of time and effort going through each sequential process, the Magnum Motion system sends things where it's needed, and it can be done as fast or as slow or in groups or banks, because it's totally flexible in the way it moves.
And what stood out for me, Paul and Mark, on that particular solution was that we've seen machine tools being automated, and we've seen robots automating machine tools, but we've not necessarily seen a lot of automation from machine tool to machine tool or process to process. So with that particular solution, you've got what I would describe as the carriages, and you've got snooker balls that represent different coloured snooker balls that represent different components, so you can be used for low mix and high variety. And basically, when the component gets put onto a carriage, that component then could go, say, to one machine to be fifth axis milled, then it could go to another machine to be the sixth side, the material to be removed, then it can be taken to a deburring up, then it can be taken to fifth, and it's effectively removing all manhandling in a CNC workshop.
Yeah, you'd have to do that, though. You'd have a lot of track, wouldn't you? Is that, mind you, I suppose if you've got no humans around because you don't need them, then that wouldn't be a concern, would it?
No, exactly. You sort of, I think the key benefits are you're removing manual intervention in a relatively perhaps low-skilled requirement, so you can put people where they're better needed to do more important tasks and strategic thinking. And it's also got some other benefits as well, such as reduced wear and tear and improved maintenance, third less energy consumption than a traditional conveyor system. So there's lots of benefits as well.
You mentioned it about being like a Scalextrics.
Yeah.
I thought it was more like a fast sushi bar.
Yeah, it's not bad.
You just don't quite know what you're going to get presented with next. Is it going to be prawns or chicken? Which would you prefer, Mark?
Well, I mean, I'd go back along
Beef?
Well, actually, I like all food, as you well know. Look at the state of me. But when I look at Rockwell, automation, a lot of people will look at you for hardware.
Yes.
But obviously, you have a very strong collaborative relationship with Fanuc. And I'm thinking that, you're only demonstrating one small part of what you actually offer. But when you work so closely with a client like Fanuc, what's the difference, would you say, to a normal customer?
Yeah, so I think the big advantage with Fanuc is that Fanuc are a platinum technology partner at Rockwell. And what that means is that at a high level, our R&D departments are engaged with each other. So when we're looking at solutions, it's solutions that seamlessly integrate into Fanuc and vice versa. So it's reducing that effort and manpower and skill set to make life as easy as possible. And I hate the term plug and play because it rarely means plug and play, but that is ultimately the game, to make things as easy as possible.
Where's the Fanuc part of the product what we've just been talking about? Which bits?
Yeah, so if you imagine that a Scalextrics track is quite handy moving snooker balls around, or indeed, milled or CNC parts, the robot bit is really that flexible way of getting material off. So in this particular instance, it's a pick and place application, but it could be to do a static process such as drilling or deburring. It could be anything really.
But that product, when I saw it, and I didn't watch it for long enough, or I probably did, but I couldn't compute whether they were all going in the same direction or the directions changed or the balls went in a different way. What's the answer to that? Is it just one uniform route, or were they going all over the place?
Completely flexible. So as I think Joe mentioned, each mover or puck has got an individual part on it, or indeed those pucks or movers can be grouped together as desired, and they can be configured to do exactly what you want. So if you're getting a certain part from a machine, it can divert and be sent a particular way, or go backwards, or be sped up. It's completely configurable.
So effectively, Mark, is it safe to say you could put a raw billet on there, and basically it hasn't got to be touched by a human, and it can be literally, the last destination could be final inspection, and it could even be automated through final inspection into dispatch without being touched by a human?
Exactly right. And obviously Fanuc robots all the way through that process, picking and placing, packaging, etc.
Isn't this more for automotive industry, or does this, or do you believe
it's high volume, isn't it? I would have thought.
More so high volume, yeah. It works well. The reason the high volume works well is that the payback on it, because it's flexible and each mover can be independently adjusted, you can get a lot of throughput and reduce bottlenecks. It also intelligently will avoid collisions, so you don't have to program any of that. It just works independently. More high volume, but it could be food and bev, it could be pharmaceutical, it could be material handling. EV batteries, an area that's getting a lot of attention, so it could be to transport goods around that. 5
tons, I think Josh mentioned to me yesterday, is the biggest payload or load that you can manoeuvre around. 5
That's amazing.
Tons.
Exactly. Yeah, literally.
What about the wear and the inertia of moving 5 tons around? That must be some design, some product, mustn't it? Because to move 5 tons continuously all the time,
Well, that's the ingenious part of it, really. There's no contact, so it's actually moving using massive magnets. So baby system from a couple of kilograms up to 5 tons. So we actually have systems installed where we're moving car bodies around.
So this is okay, right? Sorry, I'm just beginning to understand the mechanics of how this works now. Then, so this is magnet. That it's like a bit like, is it like a linear drive motor?
Exactly like that.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So is, you've got the raw material moving about, but what's driving it? Is it your software?
Yeah. So our software, which is optimized to sort of connect seamlessly into Fanuc. So our controller talks Ethernet IP, which connects directly to the Fanuc robot controller. And basically, we have some what are called add-on instructions in the PLC, which make it kind of, dare I say, child's play to say, mover number 1, you need to go from here to here. Mover number 2, you need to go backwards at this speed. And it literally is kind of setting a few parameters and off you go. Easy as that.
You've been in automation now for 20 years, I believe, Mark.
Unfortunately, so yeah.
What changes have you seen in the last 20 years, and how important do you believe, in your opinion, is it that we automate in the UK now? We've all been talking about it this week, but in your opinion, how important is it?
That's really good. Genuinely, so as you say, you can imagine my vintage at this point, but I've been in the automation game 20 plus years. I've seen more change in the last 2 years in particular than in the last 18 put together. So customers are looking for high throughput, but they're also looking for flexible, agile manufacturing. And for me, it is as black and white as innovate or potentially die, because if you're not looking forwards and looking at how data can be used in your systems, then it's going to be perhaps a short-term solution before someone comes along that does.
Because I think Fanuc have always said that we're so behind Europe that we're on big time catch up. So it makes sense, in the last 2 years, everybody it's taken a bit more notice.
But what I found out the other day as well, we found out during a podcast.
It's really thought provoking. Yeah, unbelievable.
We're actually, although we are gearing up more on automation now in this country, the deficit is growing. So in the past 2 years, Europe and other countries have invested more than we have. So albeit we're getting better, that gap is getting bigger. And that's a real worry. I didn't know that.
That's a concern. I mean, and it frustrates me because we're so good in the UK. We've got so many clever engineers and we're so good at R&D, but we just don't seem to want to scale it up to produce our own equipment. And I think that's on the turn. I just hope that we can educate companies and realise that return on investment in automation is quite viable these days.
Don't want to move on from this product yet, because I think there's so much to explore with it. Have you got anything like this in, let's say, a conventional machine shop, moving parts around? We talk about it and you mention it. Is there a real life working example of that, or are they mainly in the food and beverage environments that you mention?
Truly diverse. So we actually, I would say that the closest example I can give is, and I perhaps best not name them, but tier one automotive suppliers who are manufacturing parts, transporting them to sub-assembly processes. That's the kind of application that we're seeing a lot of use. But it is truly diverse. It is medical, food and bev. It is quite across the board.
I can really start seeing this in subcontractors, in aerospace companies, in every manufacturing facility that we visit.
But the competitor to this event could be like, when we were at DMG Mori pre-COVID 18 months ago. In Fronton.
Yeah.
There's a big thing about these autonomous vehicles carrying parts around factories, and we see it with Amazon, don't we? They're moving. It kind of similar, but this is on tracks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is it not better to have something that's off tracks, or what's the comparison?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. It's quite difficult to answer in a short way. Horses for courses. So it's a far more cost-effective solution to have a track-based system. Autonomous vehicles or robots are good at moving very big payloads. I know our system will do 5 tons, but you can have mobile devices moving much bigger weight than that. And they can autonomously navigate as well. So obviously we have a flexible track solution where you can say, go from here to here. With an autonomous vehicle, they can actually self-navigate and be a bit more flexible potentially as to what process they go to next. They can pick the best path that's optimal for them.
Yeah, do you do both?
We don't do autonomous vehicles, but we supply a lot of equipment that goes into the autonomous vehicles.
One thing I have to say is that we're talking about emerging markets in the UK, where I'm talking like subcontracting companies, winning better work. They're looking to automate it, make it cost per part effectively. But Rockwell Automation is a massive blue chip company worldwide. Yeah. To smaller subcontractors, you might come across out of their league, don't know where to start with you. How would you address that, Mark?
Oh, it's just a really good question again. So what I love about the UK, predominantly, there are some massive blue chip companies, of course, but there's a lot of SMEs, and I personally have a bit of a passion there for looking how we can innovate and automate with those SMEs. I would say that it doesn't matter where you are on your automation journey. Come and engage with us, and we've got people, teams, along with Fanuc, that will come and do automation surveys, consultancy on site at no cost, and advise practical solutions, put a business case forward, crucially try and make a financial justification behind that as well.
Going back on Mark's point, really, do you deal with a lot of small SMEs, or is it larger companies predominantly that you deal with?
I'd say the vast majority of our business is SMEs, believe it or not.
And going back on another point that Paul mentioned about that really got me thinking after we'd done the last podcast about kind of the gap increasing in regards to the adoption of automation in the UK to the rest of the world, albeit that we're still investing more than we ever have in automation. It got me thinking that because they were already on the journey, what we've seen on our travels to engineering companies, when they've invested in their first automation solution, that's it then. The switch is turned and they just continuously invest. So is that the reason? Because obviously around the world, they've already started investing. And once they've invested once, they just keep investing. Is that what, and it's like a snowball effect. Is that the reason why the gap is increasing? Because they're so many years ahead of us.
Yeah, I think it's that. And I think continental Europe, for example, end users typically will tolerate a 5-year return on investment project. They see that as quite a viable.
I've heard that 3 or 4 times this week.
Yeah, whereas in the UK, the feedback's quite often been, well, payback's not in 12 to 18 months.
Are we greedy?
I think we can be. What I would say is that some of the innovation we have now, that payback can be 12 to 18 months. So, and to your point, incremental change is better than no change at all. So let's have a pragmatic discussion across the industry would be my
I suppose
comment.
It is a bit kind of condescending in a way, because we're saying you need to automate to stay competitive, but you're not going to get a return of investment for 5 years. So it's like, well, do I really need to? You kind of. It's kind of in one hand we're saying, yep, you need to. You can't remain without automation, but then in the other hand, well, you're not going to get a return on investment for 5 years. But I think that you've got to start on that journey to really reap the rewards. Is that a fair assumption?
I think that's a fair assumption, and I think you look at the macro trends as well. People are wanting customised product now quickly, so that brings its own challenges, particularly in packaging, especially. So
it's all a learning curve. It's whether you want to learn as well. I always try and liken things to things in your domestic life, but when something changes, as simple as like your Sky system or your Sky control, you get used to what the buttons and where you press them and all the rest of it. Then you get Sky Plus or whatever it is the next, and you get your control and you're, oh no, I've got to learn, how does all this work? And can I just have the old one back?
Yeah.
Although once you get used to it, it's going to be far better for you. It's going to be quicker, and in a few weeks' time, you go, oh God, I'm glad I got the new Sky.
How did I survive before?
It's just making that little leap, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And I always think you guys have got to break, and we've got to help, but you've got to break down those barriers to people.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think is with our SME industry within the markets that we talk about, engineering and manufacturing, a lot of the older generation don't want to take those. The older they get, the worse we get for those things, don't we? And if you're at 50s, Mark, with respect, but
I'm not far behind you, Mark.
But if you are in 50s or in your 60s, your reluctance
comes to us all.
Yeah, you're reluctant to make those changes for many reasons, not just because you don't want to, but also financially. The risks become more when you get old. Maybe you want to. I don't know. You can see where I'm going. It's trying to break those barriers down. And I always think if there was a way, and we discussed it the other day as well, of commercially taking away the headaches for these things, like almost pay as you go automation. These things I think would help people if they said, do you know what? Don't spend 150 grand on that. It's going to be 30 quid every part you make, or whatever it means.
Yep.
You go, well, I can't lose. I can't lose.
I see it going that way massively. Almost, buying rather than buying a big capex piece of equipment, like you say, rent it on a piece by piece basis, or even some of us are talking now, Rockwell included, about performance based models. So if we produce X or give you an OEE output of Y, that perhaps has a differential in price value
It's a
to
great
the customer.
point.
But it happens in the aircraft industry. It will happen eventually. It will happen in machine tools as well. You won't be coming here and buying a robo drill for 80, 100, 150,000, whatever it might be. You'll be paying for what you're using.
Yeah.
And it I can just see everything going that way. And I think the automation. I think if automation was like that, you would just do it.
But even Rockwell Start, something that you're showing here that myself and Gio was looking at earlier on in the live part of the show earlier on today was the goggles, the VR goggles. So therefore, let's say for instance, Paul's got he's done quite well in business. Let's say, okay, he's got his machine tool shop, and he says, "Do you know what? I could blueprint this into. So I've got this space. You could go to, if you're quite nice to Mark, you could say, look, can I borrow the goggles because I want to see the outline of how I could actually automate, get the best out of my space. But the thing with it, a few months ago, I won't name a company, but they used cardboard boxes the size of a machine tool to actually, get the virtual reality of where they're going to put stuff.
Right.
But you're starting at that canvas where there's a shop floor and there's a roof. There's power.
There's a likeness with with that VR, and it identifies to me in the same as Fanuc's artificial intelligence in some ways with the machines now. In days, months, years gone by, if you were presented with product A, they would need to literally make it. They would need to make it in order to see what the cycle time was, what the impact and the wear and tear on the machine, the cutting tool, all of those things. They'd need to make it. That costs time, it costs money, and with potentially no gain at the end of it. Your VR sort of systems do a similar thing, don't they? You can visualize a project, actually see the part potentially being made, how long it's made, what it looks like, and then if you don't get the order, all right, you have lost, but you've not lost in the same way that you would have before.
I totally agree. Yeah, it's I think the buzzword is the digital twin.
So you
kind of, but that term's bandied around a lot. But you're right. Our Emulate 3D software allows you to build a digital model using CAD imports or library functions that we've already got. So we have a full Fanuc library, for example. We can pull that in, and Fanuc's a good example, actually. Fanuc are a company that's invested in Emulate 3D because for them, they see it as a way to build complex systems. They target applications that are £1 to £20 million, complicated systems and process lines, and it allows them to build that up and de-risk the process for them and for their customers, so they can prove throughput, they can identify bottlenecks, they can look at what the physical space looks like for a maintenance guy to go and do a task. It also allows them to emulate as well, which is quite a key point. So once you've generated the PLC code, and that software can indeed do some of that for you, once you've generated your control code, you can test it with Emulate 3D, and that's completely vendor agnostic, not just Rockwell, it could be Siemens, Mitsubishi, whoever. And you can connect it to your controller and you can actually run the program and see what happens in the digital model, so you can see if there are collisions, issues.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's incredible. And we see a reduction there in commissioning effort of around 30%. So if you can imagine a big project, that's a huge reduction in labour, manpower, effort.
I mean, what Paul says is spot on, really. I love it, and I reviewed it with Mark, and it's better to make a mistake in the virtual world than in the real world.
Absolutely,
and you kind of effectively, you're not got no downtime because you're already proving it out in the virtual world.
Yep.
But then the layout as well, you can effectively, if you've not purchased the machines yet, you could lay out your factory absolutely perfectly so you get the right flow through your factory.
Flow's a massive thing,
and it's a great sales tool as well. Do you use it as a sales tool also? Well, that's
the full circle bit, yeah. So it's a really good sales tool. So to the earlier point of UK end users not wanting to invest particularly in automation, it's a sales tool that can de-risk a project by showing them that it's entirely possible. So you've built a digital model for limited effort. Look, here you go, put the VR headset on, experience what that looks like in the real world. You can even add and remove product via your hand, for example. Touch it, feel it, see what you get for your money. And we see that releases CapEx funds a lot quicker.
Do you can you give people like Geo medication to wear the goggles so he doesn't feel so ill?
It wasn't about that. I just didn't want to mess up my hair, Mark.
Some seasick tablets might be advisable for.
I do think it's brilliant, but what I kind of don't like is the way the world outside of business is beginning to adopt these things. Like, you know, we hear this thing about Facebook. Is it called the meta world?
The metaverse.
I don't want any of this. I detested the Zoom things and all that sort of stuff, and done a minimal amount of that as I could. I just hate all that. I just really, but I can understand the need for it in those environments. I think it's fantastic. But
so what you're saying is that your communication skills aren't that good then?
I just don't. I just hate all that. Getting online and I just.
It's nice of meeting people face to face like this week. This week's been absolutely fantastic.
A lot of people said that today.
I tell you where I don't, and I don't say this just because of MTD. I don't think the virtual exhibition ever works.
It was a gimmick.
I totally agree. I could not agree more.
To me, we embarked, didn't we, some time ago on it, and we were approached about doing one, and just looked and I thought, I just cannot see
it wasn't right
how it's going to work. No. I just can't. With that, I can see 100%. I can see the benefits, you know, every second of every minute of every day. But the virtual exhibition, I just thought it's just never.
We just come back from emo. You know, I think we've done was it hour and a half live on Fanuc stand. Mm-hmm. You know, bringing alive that stand where people maybe not allowed to travel, that say at the moment, for instance, and showing all their technology. And I think that's quite key, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the virtual thing with where you go into the door and then you go onto a stand and then you touch a product and open a brochure. It's just, streaming, 100% great, of course, that's what we do. But the hybrid of the two, the event like this, a streamed event, excellent. But yeah, they're just going onto your computer. Well, you're even worse than me, Gio. I mean,
I couldn't even turn the podcast
on. He can't even get onto the website.
And they're not lying.
A serious point, Mark. For those companies that maybe have missed the Fanuc week here, what can you show them? What can you actually offer in the UK in reference to demonstrating a lot of your solutions?
So I'd say come and utilise the great premises that Fanuc and Rockwell have got. So Rockwell's based in Milton Keynes. We've got a really good demo facility. Fanuc based in Coventry, Anstey Park on the Science Park, next door to the MTC, fantastic facility. And Tom Boucher, the MD, has got a total open door policy to wanting to grow, you know, brand UK and automate and innovate. So reach out to us, come and have a look. You can do it remotely as well, but I'm a bit old school. I like a face-to-face discussion, so come and have a look at what we've got. If you don't want to do that, do it remotely.
No, brilliant. It's been a very educational and informative podcast. Thank you very much, Mark. For me, just to wrap up, and we've not really touched upon it, so I just want one final subject, digitalisation and artificial intelligence, and how does that all work hand in hand with automation? Because it's something we've just not touched on. So if we could just finish with that, please, Mark.
And I've got a point on that too.
Okay.
Karen, you go.
What a topic to finish on. So
in 1 minute.
1 minute. What I'll say here, pragmatic solutions. Reach out to us, Fanuc. We will come and have a look. So digitalisation is something we're really well set up for. We have free consultants that will come to site, look at your business problems, identify technology, do a proof of value for you, so i.e. put a proof of concept in, prove out the value, give you a business case, and then let you make a decision as to whether you invest or not.
Is that artificial intelligence, so are you big into that too?
Yeah, massively into that, yeah.
I mean, have you seen that Recycle Eye here?
That's incredible. The algorithms running on that vision system is incredible.
I've seen your video yesterday, Paul.
I've no time today.
Unbelievable. It's just, I've had so many messages from people saying, that recycle line is just...
So what's it? Is it picking up certain things and putting them in?
All the waste. At the moment, you've got in waste disposal stations or whatever they're called, you've got massive conveyors where they tip out all of the rubbish from your tidy tip onto these conveyors. And then people have to go along and, you know, there's a bit of plastic, there's a paper bag, there's this, that, and they put them into different bins. This thing, vision scans everything that's coming through the conveyor and then knows what it is and puts it in the relevant place. But the artificial intelligence side is it's learning. So it's learning.
It's teaching itself.
It's teaching itself. So it's learning if a Coca-Cola bottle comes along, it knows that that's a Coca-Cola bottle. And even to the point now where companies, maybe, I don't know whether but companies are looking at this going, I can almost like reverse. What's the word? The environmental thing by actually taking out. I can go to these guys now and say, take out every Coca-Cola bottle and give it me back. So it can read labels. It can say that's Coca-Cola. It can say that this is Pepsi. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Can it also do discarded Arsenal tickets as well?
Tops.
We can't expect miracles in AI.
I bet it's a technology that we met the founder of Esprit, didn't we? That was heavily involved in AI 30 years ago.
But the thing with this, where I'm going is that I'm not articulating it very well, but it's getting, as every day goes by, it's getting cleverer and cleverer and cleverer. So the more bits of rubbish it sees, the better it's going to get. And it's, should
we employ some of them?
It's like a human. It's easier. It's sucking in the information. I mean, it's just fascinating.
I'll just say, don't be scared. Like I say, if you're at a point as an end user plant and you're fix on fail philosophy still, but you want to become predictive maintenance, that's not an overnight journey, but there's lots of pragmatic things you can do. Simple AI that's not as complicated as you might think that can help you get there. So don't be scared to reach out.
Yeah, no, Mark, it's been absolutely brilliant. I think at MTD we've been ambassadors for automation since I joined like 4 years ago, and before that, and I can remember we've always been trying to push automation, and I think that we're starting to finally see, the OEMs embracing it now. They've started to design and manufacture their own solutions. People are considering automation when going to buy a new machine tool. I think, it's definitely changing. I can definitely see things changing.
Manufacturers, some machine tool manufacturers have actually said, look, I'm not going to work with a third party. I'm going to develop my own. I won't name them, but they are out there. It just shows you how strongly they feel that they're going to be selling machines.
It is the future, and I hope our listeners have learned something from this podcast. We've certainly learned so much this week. We've met some great people such as yourself, Mark, and learned from you. And it has been a real education for us all. And with the AI there, Paul, we're learning and evolving. And I think that if you stay the same, you'll never grow. And I think you need to invest in and at least investigate some of these new technologies. So if you've got any questions about this podcast, don't hesitate to contact MTD directly or Rockwell directly. But until next week, the MTD Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the MTD Podcast. If you found value in this episode, please subscribe and leave a rating and review. Find more episodes on MTDCNC.com.